Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, the governor's election is, shall I say, underway. How long before the actual election? More than a year. Robert Vickers, one of the leading journalists in the state who has been following the gubernatorial, and he follows presidential campaigns as well, is here. He's going to help us out. And then a little something different for Pennsylvania Newsmakers. What about investments in folks in other countries who are trying to get ahead and get a start? A little different approach by Hope International. We'll get into that and other topics after these words.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back. Well, Robert Vickers is with the Harrisburg Patriot News, and of course I must mention PennLive, right? We always go to PennLive. It's a great site. I get on it every day. Robert covers politics for the Patriot News. He's written a lot about the governor's election. He follows presidential politics as well. Robert, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Terry.
All right, look, we have perhaps an unprecedentedly early start in the governor's election. I want to talk about the Democratic candidates for a minute. Governor Corbett went through some big staff changes over the course of the summer. His polling numbers are low. We don't have to get into that. He's rated, one of the most unlikely governors to win re-election. But it looks like he's starting to do some things to try to change that. Well, let's talk about a couple of them.
Well, sure. I mean, he's changed his top staff. He's sort of gone into war room mode. They're getting prepared for this election.
I like that. Hold on. Say that again.
War room mode.
We don't hear that since, what, the Clinton days? Was that it? Go ahead.
But also, he's getting a strategy together. The Healthy PA strategy is sort of setting him up to run against Washington and Obama as opposed to running against the Democratic field. And certainly there's so many Democrats now that you could throw anything out in the air and it would land on someone running for governor from the Democratic side.
Yeah. And the other aspect about this is that we do have so much time. I mean, it would be, we don't end campaigns on here. The governor's always welcome. He's been on the program many times. And he starts such a low, his job performance is so low. But, I mean, the election's more than a year away.
It's more than a year away, and he absolutely has the power of incumbency. Governors are always reelected here in Pennsylvania for 2 terms, it seems. And with so much time, many people still point out that spend their time engaged in politics. Many things can happen. The governor could have a recovery in terms of his political agenda, get a few things passed, claim some big victories, and we were talking about a different candidate.
Yeah, that's and we don't know who the Democratic nominee will be, and that's a subject I think that we need to talk about. I count, and you're probably doing this better than me, 8 declared candidates for governor. Is that right?
That's right. A
very diverse field?
More women than in past years, but other than that, largely from the southeastern part of the state. So there are a lot of people, particularly on the Democratic side, that are looking at it and wondering if there are other candidates that could get in that might be able to cast a wider net in terms of drawing voters. Yeah,
I mean, typically in these kinds of elections, the party that doesn't have the governorship has to go around and literally, will you give up a year of your life and run in an election you're not likely to lose? This year, I think the weakness of the governor, apparent weakness, I'll put it that way, has brought this huge field out.
Absolutely, and more could come, which is kind of the shocking thing.
I noticed you keep saying that. Throw out a name.
Well, Jack Wagner, the former auditor, is rumored to be looking at the race, and former Lieutenant Governor Singal, I believe, has been floating his name around. So those are just 2. There could potentially be more.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine we could get to a soccer team of players here, right?
Absolutely.
And the interesting thing before we start talking about some of these people individually is that all of the candidates, as you point out, are east of York County. For those who don't know their Pennsylvania geography, that literally is an eastern cast of candidates. Mark Singal, a former lieutenant governor and candidate for governor, a western Pennsylvania guy, Jack Wagner, a Pittsburgh guy. And as we tape this, there'll be some time delay before it appears one or more of them may run. But what about geography?
Geography is playing a big deal in the conversation leading up to the primary because there's not somebody from the western part of the state and understanding that you need to draw or cast that wide net to get all the voters on board. There's a lot of discussion about having somebody in the primary from the western part of the state that can sort of diversify that field from a geographic perspective.
Yeah, and the other thing is if you get so many candidates from the east, and right now 8 of them, York County East, right? Mm-hmm. Go up to Allentown, where the mayor of Allentown's a candidate, a couple from the Philly burbs, Philadelphia suburbs. They could divide the vote up, so the theory might be, even though there are fewer voters out in the western part of the state, that you could have that geography work to your advantage, correct?
Absolutely. The other thing that I think is maybe being underplayed at this stage, because it's still very early, is just how nasty this primary fight has the potential to become. With so many people so eager to take out a very weak governor, they're going to look at all these people that are competing to get to that big stage and think, I'm just going to take one of these guys out at the knees as quickly as possible. And some of that stuff has already started floating.
And that could, before we run to a break, be some help to Governor Corbett, because if the Democrats beat up on each other enough, they come out of the primary weakened. So if you're Governor Corbett, that's something you would,
It's what I've started calling the Mitt Romney experience.
The Mitt Romney. I like that. All right, I'm talking with Robert Vickers from the Harrisburg Patriot News. I got to say this, and PennLive. And what we'll do is when we come back, we're going to go through some of these candidates. All of them have been, the declared candidates have been invited on the program. We've had 2 of them so far. We'll continue to invite others to come on and give you a chance to get to know them. Governor Corbett is always welcome on this program, and so are you. We'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Business Council Education Foundation, educating citizens and business leaders about important public policy issues and civic affairs. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by BetterSaferRoads.com. To voice your support for safer highways and less traffic congestion, visit BetterSaferRoads.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, I'm chatting with Robert Vickers from the Patriot News and PennLive. We're sort of previewing the governor's race. It's already well underway, and as Robert talks about, the candidates are jockeying, vying for position. There's the propensity to, who knows where it will go before it's over, but it could get ugly. We'll have to wait and see. All right, let's sort of go through a couple of these candidates, and we just within the past 10 days, we've had a candidate enter that we were all waiting for, the current State Treasurer, Rob McCord.
Rob McCord has been flirting with getting in this race for several months, some say more than a year. There were rumors a few weeks ago, right after Labor Day, that he was about to announce. It didn't happen. He talked to supporters in a conference call, said he'd be making his mind up in the next few weeks. People started doubting whether he was actually going to get in. And as soon as those doubts sort of reach a fever pitch, he jumps in.
Strong candidate, right? 2-term elected Auditor General of the state.
Has run statewide, has a political base, has a broad experiential background, has also come from the private sector. So he's going to stage a very dynamic challenge for this race.
All right, Tom Wolf, York County businessman and former Revenue Secretary under Governor Rendell. A few words about him.
Sort of the quiet man in the field. Tom Wolf, by all accounts, very well respected, strong sense of business and management. People wonder, though, if his lack of dynamism will allow him to step forward into that field.
But he's going to put up, he says,
$10 million of his own money in the primary.
And that will give him statewide recognition, agreed?
If it doesn't give it to him, he'll certainly buy it.
I like that. It's a good way to put it. All right, Kate McGinty, we've had on the program.
A former Environmental Protection Secretary from the state, also worked in the Clinton Gore administration. One of the more dynamic personalities in the race. And someone that I think some of the front runners are looking at over their shoulder, making sure that she doesn't make too many gains too early.
And McGinty's been on the program, as I've said. Who else do we want to go to? Let's talk about the mayor of Allentown, Pulowski, Ed Pulowski, I guess.
Jumped in a few weeks ago. There had been rumors for some time that he was going to do it, but he kept his cards fairly close to the vest. He's the one that comes in with executive experience.
Also running, however, for
mayor of
reelection. We'll see how that plays out. John Hanger.
John Hanger, another former Environmental Protection Department secretary, widely believed by many Democrats to be the smartest person in the field, but not necessarily the most dynamic as well, and some believe maybe a little testy when things aren't going his way.
Presumptive frontrunner, and I use that word presumptive with great caution, Allison Schwartz, Congresswoman from Montgomery County in Philadelphia.
Congresswoman Schwartz considered the front runner largely because she worked so diligently for President Obama around the state and was a former co-chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. I think I got those CCs right. Yeah. So she's been all over the country raising money for Democrats all over, and those are a lot of chips that she can call in.
Yeah, and we have a minister, Max Myers from Mechanicsburg, and a county commissioner from Lebanon County,
Joe Allen Litz.
Joe Allen Litz, not considered to be in the top tier. Would you agree? Not demeaning or not, going to rule, but
they're outsiders and long shots. But it's a democracy, and they have a right to get in the race.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. All right, before I let you go, move ahead and just lay out a scenario or two about what's going to happen here. I mean, this is really jammed up, crowded. Lots of people with advantages and disadvantages. Lay out just what happens here?
The donors have yet to get off the sidelines and start putting money behind who they think should be the candidate. We'll get the first campaign finance reports at the beginning of the year, which will be a strong indicator of if any money has moved. At that point, I think some of the lower tier candidates will fall off.
Okay.
And the real sort of death match between the top two or three really begins.
So you think ultimately we're going to end up with 3 or 4 people filing, and right now, you can declare, you can, start to raise money, but it doesn't mean you actually go out and file the petitions and get into the heat of the race, right?
Absolutely. I mean, unless you have some kind of unprecedented grassroots fire lighting by a candidate like a John Hanger, where the grassroots just really respond to his message, it's going to be very difficult for a candidate without significant resources to move forward.
All right, there you have it. Thanks to Robert Vickers. All right, we tried to give you a little thumbnail sketch about what's going to happen in this state. I mean, it's always things could change on a dime, and in politics they often do. All right, we have Peter Greer. He's the president and CEO of Hope International. This is a little different area of programming for us on PA Newsmakers, but I'll tell you, this is a very fascinating approach to helping people in other parts of the world, and it's all going to happen right here after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. We're going to do something a little different here. Peter Greer joins me. He's the president and CEO of Hope International. And, Peter has a differing view about how people should be helped instead of just providing lots of aid. And I'm going to ask him about this, and we hear reports all the time. We provide aid. It ends up going into the hands of the dictators and the thugs who run some of these. I shouldn't put it that way, because some of them, aid does go to democracies, but by the time it filters down to the people, it often doesn't reach the people it's supposed to help. And then secondly, does it really work to help them ultimately improve their lives? Peter, welcome to the program.
Thanks, sir.
Am I getting any of this right? so far? How would you well, first of all, before we get into your approach, how would you characterize the approach that we're now using to help people in many parts of the world, many parts of Africa and Eurasia? How would you define that?
Yeah, there's no question that as the images of suffering around the world have been put on the television, there are a lot of compassionate people that have responded, and so many of us have gone on trips, and originally what we see is what people don't have, and we see that we have so much, and I've been on many trips that we pack our bags, our hearts are full of good intentions.
Sure, absolutely.
We show up and we start opening up our bags, and it's greeted with gratitude.
Or we give $10 a month to help somebody for the net. Yeah,
that's right. But oftentimes when we show up and then we leave, what we miss is a bigger story, a bigger narrative of what typically happens. And there's an author named Bob Lupton who I think captured it just perfectly. And he wrote that when you show up the first time and give something away, there's gratitude. But you show back in that same community the second time and there's anticipation. The third time there's expectation. The fourth time there is entitlement. And the fifth time there's dependency. And so what's good and what's appropriate in giving someone what they need today, it's going to keep them alive perhaps, but it's always going to keep them on their knees. And so we believe that there's another approach, and instead of just giving a fish or giving a loaf of bread or giving our old shoes.
And you've done all that, right?
I've done all of that. And again, it's from a place of good intentions.
Sure.
But the data is in, and the data is this, is that good intentions are not enough to produce good results.
Right.
And so we want to change the approach. Instead of a handout, we believe it's time to start giving a hand up. Instead of giving a fish, it's time to start setting up a fishing business so that people can provide for their own families long term.
So, I mean, basically in many of these countries, there isn't literally much of an economic structure. Is that correct? I mean, there's nothing of the kinds of economic activity, likely to provide sustaining jobs. I mean, we're not just talking about for individuals within families, much less being able to hire other people and provide employment for, let's say, a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen other people. So
I'd actually challenge that a little bit, Terry.
Do it. Good.
That was my impression as well. Before I started traveling around and living, I lived in Cambodia and Rwanda and Zimbabwe. And early on, when I was living in Rwanda, after the genocide, my impression as well is these people are living in poverty, so we've got to provide for them. There's no economy, so we've got to do something for them. And even at the grassroots, even in incredible places of poverty, there still are opportunities for economic activity to begin. And I think about this one group after the genocide, a group of widows came together and they started saving 10 cents a week. Literally just 10 cents a week. They would gather in the church, they would save 10 cents a week, and they would take this, 23 women would take then the accumulated amount, $2.30, and they would invest it in one of the smallest businesses. And so the first person got $2.30 to start a charcoal business. And as she repaid the group and everyone made a little bit, they started repaying again. And so even in places that we think, man, there's nothing happening there, $2.30 was enough to start economic activity.
All right, well, let's go. Well, let's run to a break because then we'll have a little more time, and we're going to talk about your approach in the next segment. And you call it microfinancing. What does that mean? We'll hear from Peter Greer after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hi, welcome back to the program with Peter Greer. We're talking about an interesting approach to provide, I think, a way for folks in countries that need help to actually grow their own economy and to help themselves. The way you call what you are doing and what you think will work microfinancing. I got that out. Talk about that.
That's right. Yeah. So again, it just is from a very different perspective. Instead of going in and just seeing what people don't have, we go in and we see moms that are ready to care for their kids. We see dads that don't want their family to be anyone else's charity case, that are willing to work, and what they need is simply the tools. And again, that old Chinese proverb of give a man a fish, eats for a day, teach a man to fish, and eats for a lifetime.
Right.
The problem with that is if you know how to fish, it's not enough. You've got to have a net, you've got to have a boat, you've got to have bait, and that's what microfinance really is. It's walking alongside individuals, encouraging them in their business ideas, encouraging them to dream again, and then equipping them with the financial skills and training that's required. So around the world, in some places, loans are as small as $100 that is enough to start a family in a business. Other places, it's $200. Some places, it's $300.
How much of this have you done?
Right now, around the world, throughout the Hope International Network, we're serving 560,000 families in 17 countries.
Wow.
And again, it started from a church in Lancaster, Pennsylvania that was trying to help one small church after the fall of the Soviet Union, and it has gone bigger than anyone expected.
Wow. So give us a couple examples of the ways in which you all have used this approach that have worked.
Yeah, so in my job, I get to travel around. In my last trip, I got to be in Rwanda just a couple months ago, back where my wife and I were married, and a place that's still very special to our family. And as we were there, I got to meet an 80-year-old woman who was named Athanazi. She is blind, and she is a widow. And you think about anyone that would be deserving of our charity, an 80-year-old blind widow in rural Rwanda. And yet when we started talking to her...
You're telling me she's a millionaire now.
She's not a millionaire, but I tell you, there is hope and there's dignity.
So what are you doing
in her
with
life.
her?
So she ended up getting together in this group, meeting in a church with a group of other men and women that are in the community. They start saving together. They start investing in each other's dreams. And her dream was that she wouldn't be dependent on anyone else's charity. And so she ended up with her savings and then getting a loan. And that again, is the Hope International model, this community-based form of development through the local churches. And then she invested in real estate. And so she ended up...
She's a real estate mogul, right? Donald Trump.
A little different scale and size.
I get it.
But she ended up building an extension onto her house that she was able to rent out. So she is now having enough of an income to provide for her family. And she was so proud, too, again, that she wasn't dependent on anyone else. And she had someone with eyesight living in her house, and it was a benefit as well. And again...
So she would get some... Yeah, any of them gone bigger than that? I mean, if these have anything that is developed now?
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? I mean, so again, we're working with over 500,000 families today, and not all of them are the story where they go huge. But I think about Jose Luis, a man that I've had time with in the Dominican Republic. He started manufacturing wheelbarrows, and now he has a whole team, and he is fueling the construction boom in the Dominican Republic with his handmade wheelbarrows. And we actually brought one back to Lancaster, so if you want to visit our office, I can show you one of his wheelbarrows.
All right, you have a book called The Spiritual Power of Doing Good. We'll put it up here. We promote books here. We promoted most of them are political books. May I point out, people have written about politics and government. We'll put it up on the screen, and maybe we'll put it up, maybe we won't. But at any rate, we'll have to have you back, and you can check. You have your book there?
I don't. It's
you
on
don't?
the,
Okay. We don't know where the book is, but at any rate, thanks for coming on the program.
Great to be
here. All right. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and stay well.